In this unit, you are going to learn about the present simple tense, frequency adverbs, time expressions used with the present simple tense, and the question words, what time, how much, how often. The present simple tense is one of the two present tenses used in English. You have already studied the present simple of the verb to be in Unit 1 and will study the verbs have, can and must in other units. The rules for these verbs are different. The affirmative form of the present simple of other verbs is formed using the base form of the verb after a noun or subject pronoun. When we say base form of the verb, we mean the infinitive without to. The verb is the same for all persons except the third person singular, he, she, it, where we add s to the verb. Let's take an example, the verb to work. The base form of the verb is work, and the present simple using pronouns is I work, you work, he works, she works, it works, we work, you work, they work. The only change in form is for he, she, it. But please remember this change. He work is a mistake. When verbs end in s, double s, sh, ch, x or z, we add es for the third person singular form, and es is pronounced as a separate syllable. Here are some examples. Kiss, kisses. Push, pushes. Teach, teaches. Mix, mixes. Buzz, buzzes. We also add es to the verbs do and go to form goes and does. Note that the pronunciation is not the same. He does, he goes. She goes, she does. For verbs that end in y, preceded by a consonant, we remove the y and add ies. Marry, marries. Fly, flies. Empty, empties. But there is no change when a verb ends in y preceded by a vowel. Play, plays. Enjoy, enjoys. The rules for these spelling changes are similar to the rules for spelling changes in forming the plural of nouns. But remember that here we are not talking about plurals but about a verb ending. The change in the base verb in the third person singular. In negative present simple sentences, you must use the auxiliary verb do followed by not. I do not work. You do not work. We do not work. You do not work. They do not work. The contracted form of do not is don't, generally used in speech and in informal writing. I don't work. You don't work. We don't work. They don't work. To form negative sentences for the third person singular, use the auxiliary does, followed by not, followed by the base verb without s. The contracted form of does not is doesn't. The negative of the third person singular is he does not work. He doesn't work. She does not work. She doesn't work. It does not work. It doesn't work. The auxiliary verb do must also be used to form questions. We form present simple questions by placing do before the subject and verb, as in these examples. Do I work? Do you work? Do we work? Do you work? Do they work? For third-person singular questions, use the auxiliary does, followed by the subject and the base verb without s, as in these examples. Does he work? Does she work? Does it work? The rules for question formation are the same when you use question words. Where do you work? Where does Jane work? Where do they work? You'll have to remember that you cannot translate negative and interrogative sentences directly from Italian into English. If you say any of the following, people will probably find it difficult or impossible to understand you. Where work? I not work. Work you? He works not, are all mistakes. The short answers used in reply to yes, no questions are: yes, I do. Yes, you do. Yes, we do. Yes, they do. And yes, he does. Yes, she does. Yes, it does. In the affirmative, and no, I don't. No, you don't. No, we don't. No, they don't. No, he doesn't. No, she doesn't. No, it doesn't. In the negative. You must use the auxiliary verbs in short answers and cannot use the main verb. Here is an example. In answer to the question, do you work in an office? You can answer, yes, I do, or no, I don't. But it is a mistake to answer, yes, I work, or no, I don't work. When do we use the present simple tense? The present simple tense is used in these cases to describe situations or actions which are routine. I get up at 7 o'clock. I don't drive to work. To describe a person's thoughts, feelings, sensations or appearance. My hand hurts. He doesn't look very well. I feel sleepy. To describe things which happen all the time. It rains in April. It never snows in May. To state a general truth. Computers make life easier. Water freezes at 0 degrees centigrade. To describe a long-term, not a temporary, situation which includes the present. My brother doesn't work. My uncle lives in California. To describe the action in a book, poem, play or film. It's a story about two brothers, Jake and Elwood. Jake gets out of prison and finds Elwood waiting for him in a police car. To describe the action in a sports event. Johnson gets the ball. He passes to McRae. McRae shoots and it's a goal. We also use the present simple when speaking about timetables, both in general and in the future. The bank opens at 8:30 on weekdays. My train leaves at 9 o'clock tomorrow. When must you avoid using the present simple tense? You should not use the present simple tense in these cases. Don't use the present simple tense to describe actions that are happening at the moment of speaking or writing. Quiet, the baby sleeps, is a mistake. I write this letter to ask for information, is a mistake. Don't use the present simple tense to refer to future plans and arrangements. Where do you go this evening? I go to the cinema, are mistakes. Don't use the present simple tense in offers, promises and threats. I carry your bag. I buy you a nice present. I kill you, are all mistakes. The use of the present simple tense in historical narrative is a mistake. Elvis Presley is born in Mississippi. His family is poor but religious, and Elvis learns to sing in his church choir. The present simple tense is sometimes used in anecdotes and past narrative, but is considered substandard. He walks in, doesn't say a word, and sits down at his desk. So I get angry and say, now you know when you can use the present simple tense and when you should not use it. When we use this tense, we often use frequency adverbs to indicate if something is done always, sometimes, or never. Here are adverbs of frequency you will need to use. Always, almost always, usually, normally, generally, often, frequently, sometimes, occasionally, rarely, seldom, hardly ever, never. You need to know where to place these adverbs in sentences. Almost, always, always, hardly ever, never, rarely, seldom must be placed after the verb to be. For example, I am hardly ever late for work, and are placed before other verbs. For example, I seldom drive to work. Here are other examples in negative sentences and in questions. Are you always on time? Do you always go by bus? He isn't always on time. I don't always go by bus. I never walk to work. Note that in English you cannot use a double negative, so you cannot say I don't, never. All the other frequency adverbs listed above can also be placed in this position, mid-sentence, and in fact this is where they are normally placed. I sometimes work late. I normally stay at home in the evening. I usually watch television. I am generally punctual. Frequently, generally, normally, occasionally, often, sometimes, usually can also be placed at the beginning or at the end of a sentence. All these sentences are correct. I usually get up late on Saturday. Usually, I get up late on Saturday. I get up late on Saturday, usually. However, when the adverb is placed at the beginning or the end of a sentence, we understand that additional emphasis is being given to how frequently an action takes place. The exception is often. Note that the meaning of both the following sentences is the same. I often go to the cinema. I go to the cinema often. However, there is added emphasis on often when it is placed at the beginning of a sentence. Often, I go to the cinema. Now we are going to look at other adverbial expressions that indicate how frequently something is done. These expressions are generally several words in length. They cannot be placed mid-sentence. They can be placed at the beginning or the end of the sentence, but are normally placed at the end of the sentence. Placing the following expressions at the beginning of a sentence indicates added emphasis. Here are expressions you can use with the present simple tense. Once a year, once a month, once a week, once a day, twice a year, twice a month, every week, every 6 months, every Saturday, every so often, from time to time, in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening, at night, at 9 o'clock, at 12:30, in May, in September, in spring, in summer, during the week, at the weekend, at Christmas, at Easter, on Christmas, on New Year's Day, on Easter Sunday, on Monday, on Tuesday, on Wednesday, on Thursdays. Finally, here are question words that are often used with the present simple tense. What time? Not at what time. How much? How often? Here are some questions using these words and the present simple tense. What time do you start work? What time does Jim have lunch? How much do newspapers cost? How much does a telephone call cost? How often do you go to the dentist? How often do you read a newspaper? That is the end of the lesson. Now you can do the exercises on the grammar points presented in this unit.